crowd is always wrong whenever it is unanimous. Carl Jung once warned us about the hidden danger of losing ourselves in the noise of the many. You've felt it before, sitting in a room, scrolling your feed, walking down the street, and wondering if common sense has quietly left the building. Everywhere you look, people repeat ideas they've never questioned, defend beliefs they barely understand, and follow trends that lead nowhere. It's not stupidity in the simple sense. It's a collective fog, a quiet hypnosis that pulls even intelligent minds off course. But here's the unsettling truth. In a world where the herd moves without thinking, the one who pauses to think is seen as the threat. This is where your clarity, your independence, becomes more than personal survival. It becomes resistance. If you believe independent thought still matters, share this message, like it, and subscribe for more conversations that challenge the noise. Carl Jung warned that when a person loses connection with their true self, the deep inner core that anchors identity, they instinctively search for safety in the collective. At first, it feels like belonging, like finding your place among others. But when that belonging comes at the cost of your independent thought, it quietly transforms into something dangerous. A distorted collective unconscious, where shared beliefs spread not because they are true, but because no one dares to question them. Gustave Le Bon saw this more than a century ago, observing that individuals in a crowd lose their ability to think critically. Reason fades, emotions surge, and behavior becomes impulsive and easy to manipulate. In our time, the crowd is not only on the streets, it exists everywhere in the invisible networks we scroll through daily. One hashtag, one slogan, or one unchecked claim can ignite like dry grass in a wildfire, repeating across feeds until it feels unquestionable simply because everyone is saying it. You've seen it. Friends posting the same phrases, colleagues echoing the same talking points even when the facts are uncertain. This is not just ignorance. It is mass delusion reinforced by herd mentality, where error gains authority through popularity. You might think you are immune because you value self-awareness and critical thinking, yet the pull is subtle. Modern life is designed to blur the line between your own thoughts and the noise of the collective. In moments of crisis, economic downturns, political instability, public health emergencies, the pressure intensifies. Fear spreads faster than reason. People stop asking why and start following the crowd because the crowd feels safer than standing alone. When everyone around you is speaking with one voice, silence feels like danger and agreement feels like survival. In that moment, why do you follow the crowd? Is it because you believe or because you fear the cost of speaking otherwise? Consider a real situation. During a sudden public controversy, your social feed explodes with outrage. Within hours, opinions are split into two extremes. You notice inconsistencies. You see how information is being twisted, but you also see that questioning it makes others turn on you. You scroll past hundreds of comments shaming those who disagree. This is how mass delusion sustains itself, not through evidence, but through the emotional weight of conformity. Le Bon would say the crowd turns adults into children, reacting not from clarity, but from collective emotion. Jung would add that when you cannot face your own uncertainty, you seek comfort in the group's certainty, even if that certainty is false. This realization opens a new path to understanding why independent thought is so rare. It is not just about intelligence. Many intelligent people still lose the ability to think clearly when surrounded by a unified but misguided consensus. When you are immersed in a collective fog, the question is not only why you can't think clearly, but whether you even notice the fog exists. Recognizing it demands a quiet kind of courage, a willingness to pause when everyone else is running, to ask questions when silence is easier, and to reclaim the part of you that knows truth is not decided by majority vote. In a world where the crowd moves without thinking, the act of thinking becomes your first step toward escape. It is the moment you stop drifting with the current and start feeling the ground beneath your own feet. It is the refusal to surrender your clarity for the comfort of belonging. And yet, as soon as you take this step, you meet another force just as powerful, the ancient, unspoken fear of being alone. Carl Jung understood this fear well. He saw it as a primal instinct wired deep into the human psyche. For our ancestors, isolation often meant death. Survival depended on the tribe. Even now, in an age where we can live independently, that survival code remains. You feel it when you hesitate before expressing an unpopular opinion. You feel it in the small pause before you decide whether to speak or stay silent. Somewhere inside, a voice whispers that stepping away from the group carries a cost. This is why so many are willing to trade truth for acceptance. Solomon Asch demonstrated this in a simple yet profound experiment. Participants were asked to judge the length of lines, a task so straightforward the correct answer was obvious. But when actors in the room deliberately gave the wrong answer, most real participants conformed, giving the same wrong answer, even when it clashed with the evidence of their own eyes. They didn't do it because they suddenly believed the false answer. They did it because standing apart felt worse than being wrong. Today, the Asch experiment plays out on a massive scale, amplified by the reach of social media. In the digital square, opinions form in minutes and the majority voice grows loud quickly. If you question it, you risk being ridiculed, labeled, or excluded. You might witness information being twisted, statistics taken out of context, or narratives collapsing under scrutiny. But the pressure to stay in line can be overwhelming. You tell yourself that silence is harmless, that one voice can't change anything. But each time you silence yourself, the collective illusion grows stronger. It's not just that independent thinking is discouraged. It is slowly eroded. In a climate where dissent is treated as betrayal, you learn to suppress your own perception. You start to mirror the crowd, not because you've lost the ability to think, but because the cost of thinking feels too high. The tragedy is that this creates a surface agreement, masking deep, unspoken disagreement. On the outside, it looks like unity. Underneath, it's a fragile consensus built on fear. You may recognize this in moments from your own life, times when you've held back, nodded along, or let misinformation pass unchecked, not because you were convinced, but because you didn't want to be the one who disrupted the harmony. Jung would call this a symptom of disconnection from the self, the part of you that knows when something is wrong, even if no one else admits it. The more you ignore that inner compass, the fainter its voice becomes. The real danger isn't that people can't think clearly, it's that they stop trusting their own clarity. They outsource their judgment to the group, hoping that safety lies in numbers. But safety built on falsehood is temporary, and the cost of belonging at the expense of truth is higher than it first appears. The moment you begin to notice this pattern in yourself is the moment you hold the key to reversing it. You can still choose to listen to the quiet voice within, even when it shakes, even when it stands alone. And in doing so, you begin the work of reclaiming the one thing the crowd can never give you, your own mind. But holding on to that mind, keeping it truly yours, requires more than resisting the pressure to conform. It requires seeing how easily that mind can be surrendered, not just to the majority, but to the will of authority. Carl Jung understood that when a person lacks a strong internal framework, a clear set of values, a sense of purpose, they become vulnerable to handing over control to someone else. In that emptiness, authority steps in like a ready-made compass, offering certainty in exchange for obedience. It feels like safety, but it is really dependency. And dependency, in the hands of the wrong leader, becomes the perfect condition for manipulation. Stanley Milgram's famous obedience experiment revealed this with unsettling clarity. Participants were told by a man in a white lab coat to administer electric shocks to another person, increasing the voltage each time. They could hear the victim's cries, the pleas for mercy, and yet most continued simply because the authority figure insisted. They weren't cruel by nature. They were obedient by conditioning. The white coat was enough to override their moral compass. Now imagine the white coat in today's world. It may not be a scientist. It might be a politician delivering confident speeches, a media anchor reading from a teleprompter, a celebrity influencer speaking as though they hold absolute truth. These symbols of authority work not because they have earned your trust through wisdom, but because they carry the appearance of legitimacy. Without questioning, you accept their narrative, and in doing so, you begin to act on their behalf, sometimes in ways that contradict your own ethics. Think of the moments when public fear is high, a health crisis, a sudden political shift, an economic panic. In these moments, the authority's voice becomes louder, more urgent, and less tolerant of dissent. The collective mind contracts around the idea that obedience is the fastest way to safety. And yet, this is precisely when obedience without thought is most dangerous. It's when laws are passed without scrutiny, when truths are silenced before they can be tested, when ordinary people find themselves enforcing rules they barely understand. Jung would say that this surrender happens because the individual has lost touch with the self, the inner source of direction that does not need external permission to act in alignment with truth. When the self is absent, external commands feel like guidance. They give structure to the chaos inside, but at the cost of freedom. And the more you obey without reflection, the more that obedience becomes part of your identity. You may not be in a lab, but the psychological mechanism is the same. A boss tells you to repeat a narrative you know is misleading, and you do it to keep your position. A social group demands you endorse a cause you haven't researched, and you agree to avoid being excluded. You sense the wrongness, but the symbol of authority, whether it's a person, a group, or a system, feels too large to challenge. The danger is not only in the harm done to others, but in the quiet harm done to yourself. Each act of unthinking obedience erodes your confidence in your own judgment. Over time, you may find it harder to tell where your thoughts end and someone else's begin. This is how control takes root, not through force, but through the willing abdication of personal sovereignty. Breaking this pattern begins with a simple but radical act, questioning authority, even the ones you trust. Asking, does this align with my values, before you act? Not because you seek rebellion for its own sake, but because your conscience is your first and final authority. Jung's insight was clear. The mind that cannot stand alone will always be ruled by another. To escape the grip of blind obedience, you must first remember that no symbol, no title, no position of power can replace the quiet certainty of a mind that belongs to itself. Yet even when you reclaim that certainty, another paradox waits in the shadows, the unsettling truth that freedom itself can feel unbearable. Erich Fromm, in Escape from Freedom, described this as one of the deepest contradictions in human nature. We claim to desire freedom, but when faced with the weight of it, many of us seek to flee. Freedom is not just the ability to choose, it is the responsibility to live with the consequences of those choices. It demands that you decide without guarantees, navigate uncertainty without a map, and shape your own meaning without someone handing it to you. For some, this is exhilarating. For others, it is suffocating. When the burden grows too heavy, there is a tempting alternative. Hand over your freedom to a system, an ideology, or a leader who promises to decide for you. In doing so, you trade the anxiety of choice for the comfort of direction. It feels like relief, but it is really surrender. Fromm saw this surrender in the way people gravitate toward authoritarian structures, not because they are coerced, but because they believe obedience will protect them from the chaos of uncertainty. Carl Jung added a deeper layer to this insight. He believed that our aversion to freedom is rooted in the refusal to face the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we reject. The shadow holds not only our fears and weaknesses, but also our suppressed desires, unacknowledged flaws, and unresolved contradictions. To live freely, you must meet this shadow without flinching. But many would rather bury it and hide inside the safety of the collective, where personal responsibility dissolves. Inside the collective, the personal shadow merges into a collective shadow. Behaviors you would never justify alone become acceptable because everyone is doing it. Cruelty, dishonesty, or even violence can be excused when they are wrapped in the approval of the group. This is why movements built on extremism or propaganda can sustain themselves. They give people a socially sanctioned way to project their darkness outward, all while believing they are acting in virtue. History is filled with examples: political purges, ideological crusades, cultural revolutions. Each one offered its followers a strange kind of freedom. The freedom from having to think for themselves, from having to wrestle with moral ambiguity, from having to question their own motives. In return, they gave their allegiance, their labor, and sometimes their humanity. You can see this pattern today in subtler forms. When a public figure tells you exactly who to blame for your problems, you feel the relief of a simple answer. When a movement offers you a ready-made identity, you no longer have to grapple with the messy work of defining yourself. When a group assures you that your side is purely good and the other side purely evil, you no longer need to confront the shadow in your own beliefs. These are all forms of escaping freedom, not by losing it to an oppressor, but by willingly handing it over. Fromm and Jung would both warn that this escape comes with a hidden cost. In seeking to avoid the uncertainty of freedom, you also avoid the growth it demands. You remain dependent, shaped by external forces rather than by your own deliberate will. The collective may protect you from the discomfort of choice, but it also traps you in its limitations. The harder truth is that real freedom will always carry the weight of responsibility, and that weight is not meant to be avoided. It is meant to strengthen you. Facing your shadow, making your own decisions, and owning your mistakes is the price of becoming a whole person. Anything less may feel safer, but it is not truly living. The question you must ask yourself is this: do you want the comfort of being carried or the challenge of standing on your own? One offers relief, the other offers transformation. Only by choosing the latter can you ensure that your freedom is not an illusion granted by others, but a reality grounded in the unshakable truth of who you are. Yet even when you hold that freedom, there's another danger waiting. A quieter, subtler force that does not take your freedom away in one blow, but erodes it through silence and consensus. Irving Janis called it groupthink, the tendency for groups to agree on flawed decisions simply because no one dares to disrupt the appearance of harmony. In a room where everyone nods along, the person who raises a hand to say, "I'm not sure this is right," becomes the outsider. The cost of speaking is social friction, and so most people choose not to speak at all. Over time, this silence breeds the illusion that everyone agrees, even when many privately don't. This is what psychologists call pluralistic ignorance, a collective blindness maintained not by belief, but by fear. Carl Jung explained this phenomenon from a deeper psychological perspective. When you lose connection to yourself, your identity becomes dependent on external validation. You look to the group for a mirror, measuring your worth by whether that mirror reflects approval or rejection. In such a state, any opinion that risks disapproval feels dangerous. You begin to avoid not only conflict with others, but even the discomfort of disagreeing with them internally. This is how the cycle becomes self-sustaining. The absence of dissent reinforces the belief that dissent does not exist, which in turn increases the pressure to remain silent. Eventually, the group's collective voice drowns out the quiet truth within individuals. Even those who see the flaws in a decision may convince themselves that the cost of speaking is greater than the cost of going along. You've likely felt this before, in a workplace meeting where an obviously flawed plan was approved without question, in a social group where misinformation spread unchallenged, or online when a dominant opinion silenced all nuance. In those moments, you may have asked yourself, why can't I think clearly? The truth is, you can, but thinking clearly is not the same as speaking clearly, and groupthink thrives in that gap. The danger of groupthink is not only in the bad decisions it produces, it's in the gradual erosion of personal sovereignty. Each time you withhold your true thoughts, you give the group more power over your perception of reality. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to doubt your own perspective. Before long, you are not just pretending to agree. You start to internalize the group's beliefs as your own, even when they contradict your experience. Jung would say this is the point where the collective shadow grows strongest, because no one confronts the group with its blind spots. Those blind spots harden into dogma. The group can commit errors, even moral wrongs, with the comfort of believing it is unified in righteousness. History shows that some of the worst injustices were not carried out by lone villains, but by groups convinced they were doing the right thing, shielded by the false comfort of unanimous agreement. Breaking free from this requires more than courage. It requires a return to the self. You must rebuild the inner anchor that allows you to stand firm, even when the group sways in the wrong direction. This does not mean rejecting every consensus out of pride, but it does mean refusing to let fear of disapproval dictate your voice. It means speaking when speaking is hard, and sometimes standing alone so that others might see they are not alone. The irony is that often, when one person finally breaks the silence, others feel a sense of relief. They too had doubts, but were waiting for someone else to go first. In this way, your refusal to surrender to groupthink can be the spark that restores truth to the conversation. The moment you stop outsourcing your clarity to the crowd is the moment you reclaim not just your freedom, but your responsibility to it. And yet, this reclamation often comes with a price, one that cannot be measured in applause or approval. Carl Jung believed that true awakening is inseparable from the acceptance of solitude. When you begin to see truth that the collective prefers to ignore, you inevitably step outside the invisible circle of mutual reassurance. You start to feel the chill of the open air, the absence of the constant hum of agreement, and the weight of carrying a vision that others refuse to acknowledge. Viktor Frankl, reflecting on his survival in the concentration camps, observed that those who endured were not necessarily the strongest or the most optimistic, but those who had a why, a meaning so deeply rooted in their being that no external cruelty could uproot it. This meaning could be a commitment to a loved one, an unshakable belief, or even the pursuit of a truth yet unseen. Such a purpose acted as an inner compass, orienting the soul even in the midst of chaos. Hannah Arendt offered a parallel warning in her exploration of what she called the banality of evil. She pointed out that much of the world's harm is not carried out by monsters in the shadows, but by ordinary people fulfilling their role without reflection. The soldier who follows orders, the bureaucrat who signs the papers, the bystander who stays silent, they are the gears that turn the machinery of harm. Recognizing this is painful because it forces you to confront the possibility that you, too, have once remained silent when you should have spoken, or complied when you should have resisted. Awakening, then, is not the blissful enlightenment so many imagine. It is not a warm light flooding your path with certainty. More often, it feels like being stripped of the comforting illusions that once held you. You see the cracks in the stories you were told, and the fragility of the structures you once trusted. And because most people are not ready or willing to face these cracks, you may find yourself walking forward with fewer companions than you had before. This is the paradox. To hold on to your clarity, you must often let go of the comfort of belonging. The crowd offers warmth, but it is the warmth of a room where the air is slowly growing toxic. Stepping outside is cold, but it is also the only place you can breathe. And so you learn to live without the constant approval of the group, replacing it with the steadier, quieter approval of your own conscience. Along the way, you will encounter those rare souls who have also stepped out of the circle. You may recognize them not by their words alone, but by the way they listen, the way they carry themselves without the need to dominate or submit. They, too, have known the ache of being misunderstood, and yet they keep walking. Not because it is easy, but because to turn back would be to betray themselves. Frankl would remind you that meaning can transform suffering into strength. Arendt would remind you that responsibility begins in the smallest acts of choice. And Jung would remind you that individuation, the process of becoming whole, cannot be outsourced to the collective. It is a path you walk with your own feet, guided by your own inner compass, even when it leads you away from where the many are headed. Awakening is not a reward you are given for thinking clearly. It is a discipline you practice, a choice you reaffirm each time you resist the pull of comfortable illusions. And in that choice, you may lose the crowd, but you gain the one thing worth keeping, the integrity of a life that is truly your own. From here, the question becomes not just how to step away from the collective fog, but how to remain clear when the fog tries to pull you back in. For Jung, the only path out begins within. It is not about finding the right group to belong to or adopting a new ideology that feels safer. It is about reconciling with your own shadow, the parts of yourself you've avoided, denied, or projected onto others. Until you acknowledge and integrate these aspects, you will always be vulnerable to the seduction of the group's ready-made identities. The first act of liberation is to see yourself fully, without the distorted mirrors of public approval or condemnation. This self-reconciliation allows you to reclaim your identity, not the one shaped by algorithms, peer pressure, or fear, but the one that can stand on its own, even when it is not applauded. When you know who you are, the noise of the crowd loses its hypnotic pull. You stop mistaking popularity for truth and consensus for wisdom. From here, a few principles become essential to protecting your mind from the slow poison of collective ignorance. The first is to create deliberate distance from sources that manufacture mass fear. Fear is the fuel of manipulation. When it spikes, your rational mind dims, and you become more likely to follow the loudest voice rather than the truest one. Train yourself to pause when you feel an emotional surge and ask, who benefits from me feeling this way? That moment of questioning can break the chain of reflexive obedience. Second, practice self-observation before reaction. The modern world rewards speed, instant replies, immediate outrage, rapid alignment with whichever side is trending. But the mind that resists the crowd knows the power of the pause. Before you act on anger, before you amplify outrage, stop and ask, why do I feel this? Is this truly my thought, or is it borrowed? In that pause, you reclaim the space between stimulus and response, the space where freedom lives. Third, seek connection with those rare communities that value truth over comfort. This does not mean surrounding yourself only with people who agree with you. It means finding people who challenge you without trying to erase you, who see disagreement not as betrayal, but as an act of respect. In such a circle, your individuality is not a liability, but a contribution, and you are reminded that solitude does not have to mean isolation. The ultimate goal is not merely to escape the collective ignorance, as if it were a place you could walk away from forever. The real aim's to become the kind of independent mind that stands so firmly in its own clarity that it becomes a quiet beacon to others. Jung understood that the transformation of the collective begins with the transformation of the individual. One person who stands rooted in truth can silently give permission for countless others to do the same. You will not always see the results of your resistance. Sometimes, you will feel like you are speaking into the wind, unseen and unheard. But even in that invisibility, your stance has weight. Every moment you refuse to surrender your mind to the group, you weaken the chains that bind it. And sometimes, without knowing, you may be the reason someone else finds the courage to step out of the fog. Escaping collective ignorance is not a one-time event. It is a daily discipline. It is the art of keeping your mind your own in a world that constantly tries to rent it out. It is the commitment to truth even when lies are more convenient, to clarity even when confusion feels safer. And it is the recognition that by protecting the sovereignty of your own mind, you are not only freeing yourself, you are quietly opening the door for others to walk through. When you step back and see the patterns, Jung's lessons become painfully clear. We live in a time when groupthink, fear, and blind obedience quietly shape the way people think, speak, and act. Yet every example we've explored, from Le Bon's crowd psychology to Ash's conformity experiments, from Milgram's obedience studies to Fromm's fear of freedom, points to the same truth. The only real escape from collective ignorance is the reclamation of your own mind. That begins with self-awareness psychology, recognizing when you are reacting, not reflecting. It means noticing the moment you're tempted to trade truth for belonging. It means learning to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to the false safety of the crowd. If you take only one practice from this, let it be this. Each day, before you respond to any piece of news, conversation, or pressure, pause and ask yourself, is this truly my thought, or is it borrowed? This simple act of questioning will strengthen your ability to think for yourself, and over time it will free you from the mental slavery of psychology that traps so many. Carl Jung believed that by facing your own shadow, you become less vulnerable to the manipulations of the collective. The world doesn't change because the crowd wakes up. It changes because enough individuals refuse to fall asleep. So, I invite you, share your own story in the comments. Tell us about a moment when you realized you were following the crowd and how you broke free. And if you found something here worth holding on to, subscribe to join a community that values truth over comfort, clarity over noise. Because every time one of us stands in our own mind, we give someone else permission to do the same.